I am Michelle Larkin, and I am here to talk with my good friend, Chappell, and we're going to share with you some insights on the entrepreneur mindset. So I'm excited about this conversation. I think you're going to enjoy it. We tend to enjoy our exchanges, but I wanted to take this time to share some wisdom to kind of help people who are struggling or with trying to define what the entrepreneurial mindset is, trying to manage having it in the workplace, and trying to figure out what it might look like to shift out of the corporate space into the entrepreneur space. So those are the three areas that we're going to talk through. So I want to give you a little insight about who I'm going to talk to today. Chappell is a serial entrepreneur. And why I say serial is because he has multiple business entities that he has started. He's been in the business for a long time, and his specialty is creating strategic programs that connect people to resolve problems. He's experienced in these areas, which is interesting. Multicultural marketing, professional. He's a multicultural marketing professional with a demonstrated history of working in the sports, events, entertainment, and technology. Very broad stretch of industries. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself now that we know how fabulous you are and how extraordinary you are and how experienced you are?
Are you ready for me?
Speak on.
So, as you talk about entrepreneur mindset,
Yes,
I believe I've had that all my life.
all your life.
The thought of doing something that I'm passionate about and not having to worry about being flexible or on anyone else's time. And so officially, it's always been in there. I've always enjoyed being able to control my own destiny, even if it wasn't really
If you're an entrepreneur,
true.
you recognize that buzzword.
Yeah.
Control
Yeah.
my own destiny.
Yeah. So you're always thinking about it, and you're really looking for the opportunity to jump on your own and test it. And the test may be short, it may be long, but you want to you have a feeling of controlling your environment and being able to provide for yourself with something that you love to do. So I'd say officially I've been an entrepreneur for almost 20 years at this point, and in various businesses that I'm passionate about.
So would you say like testing you can be a serial entrepreneur because you've tested several areas? Or like you said, we talk about technology and marketing and strategic planning, like they're connected, but they're different. So you've tested a couple of different industries.
So I've had several careers where I've seen a lot of things happening, and I understand how profit is made from different environments that I'm passionate about. So when we say sports and events and technology, I'm passionate about those things. I like those things. And so when I see a scenario where there's an ability to earn revenue and make profit from it, I almost, in my mind, incubate those things and prepare myself to test those things. And then once an opportunity comes about, I'll go test it and try to drive revenue from it.
I love it. I love it. So the difference between an employee and an entrepreneur is an employee is typically paid by time. An entrepreneur is typically paid for by their results, and by their meaning profit, right? So there's a mindset that is a little different, and we're going to kind of go through a little bit of those nuances. So what is an entrepreneur's mindset is where I want to start. You told us a little bit about what it looks like because you've always had it. Can you give some real world indicators of when you first tested something and you knew it was good? Like, what was your first success?
My first success was probably selling candles in the 4th grade.
It felt good? Is that what you're saying?
It felt good to be successful in selling more than anybody else. So you have to have a competitive mindset. You're going to have other folks that are doing similar work to you.
Always.
The idea is to create something, be very good at it, so that you can make enough revenue to surpass your expenses and make profit. And I keep coming to that because You can make revenue and lose money, but and some people don't understand that because they're not able to capture what expenses really happen. And so I would say fourth grade, there was a challenge to sell candles. Other people were selling them. I sold the most. I won a prize. And so I thought to myself, I did a lot of that on my own. And I'm interested in figuring out what are some things that are cool that I would want to do. My first business success, I would say, was being able to pay bills for a year.
Off of revenue.
Off of
profit.
revenue,
I'm sorry, profit.
minus the expenses, and having profit. And so what I was always thinking about before I had done it was, how do I keep my expenses as low as possible such that I can maintain some minimum level of quality life, knowing I can't do all the work by myself. I know I have to bring on people. So I was literally looking at building from an expense standpoint, what is this going to cost, and then trying to determine how much money do I need to make before I can actually go do that on my own.
So you realize that you sound like somebody who went to business school. Now, every entrepreneur hasn't necessarily experienced business school, but the way you're speaking, how would you say that your degree, which I think you have a master's in business, how would you say your degree enhanced what you knew? Do you feel like this revenue minus expenses equals profit was something that was just drilled into you, and or that you always were thinking of that?
I didn't understand a lot of it until I was in undergrad in business. And that was further clarified as I felt more comfortable after business school with the numbers. And that's what gets a lot of entrepreneurs, especially younger ones, in trouble, not understanding what the cost of what you want to do, how that affects your quality of life. And so going through, seeing different scenarios, watching other entrepreneurs, and being able to run the numbers, that's going to be key in how long you can do it. So if you are able to run the numbers and you get them right, and something that you want to do costs $100,000 a year, and you want to make $80,000 a year,
then you need to make way more than $100,000.
You need to make more than $100,000 in order to maintain that quality of life. So the more money you can make each year, so getting a client, will help you determine if you can, cover those expenses long term. And that's what you want to do.
So you can see that running the numbers is a theme, because it's clearly come up several times. That's one aspect of entrepreneurship, and understanding how to maintain that entrepreneurial mindset. What are some other factors that let you know that you have it, other than that concern for getting to a certain state of profit? What other things go on?
I mean, you have a passion for, and I don't even really want to call it work, because if you have a passion for it, it doesn't feel like work.
Right, it's like activity. You have a need to be moving towards something constantly. Like I would say that for me. I is not going to sit at home and twiddle my thumbs and wait for some business opportunity to land in my lap. I am constantly, as you said, looking for something or scanning the horizon for an opportunity to contribute my skill set in a way that moves something forward. I'm constantly looking for that. So that's not necessarily working for hours.
You're incubating.
That's what you call incubating.
That is incubating. You're thinking about the right scenarios that will allow you to do what you want to do on your own terms. And you're constantly seeing those. So when you talk about being a serial entrepreneur, you may like more than one thing.
And that's fine.
And that's perfectly fine, as long as you understand each one of those things is going to take resources. So that may be time, that may be money, and as you're incubating it, you may not have revenue, but you're looking for places where revenue can come to allow you to launch it.
So because I know you a little bit, I want to ask you this question, because it's one of my favorite things that you do is these spreadsheets. It's okay to have several things, but I think you keep them organized because you have a different set of records, if you will, for each area of interest that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about how that helps keep the noise straight?
Yeah.
Makes it music instead of noise, it's
That's come
music?
over time. When I first started, it was one thing on the paper. And
we evolve.
yeah.
It takes time.
But there was one main company, several activities in that company. And quite honestly, it was becoming close to failure that started me to thinking about how do I vertically create different entities that can make separate revenue. And all of those things were the things that I was passionate about. If there are things that I'm not passionate about, but there are needs, then I have to figure out how I acquire those.
Which
have
may be
enough.
connection or resources or people.
It's usually a cost to it, though. So I have to.
And
you
cost
know,
is not always money. Sometimes it's
Cost is not always
investment
money.
of time and energy and
Yeah.
cultivating some relationships. There's a cost to a lot of things.
Yeah, and resource.
Resource
So,
development.
so what resources are needed in order to make that successful? And quite honestly, if it's not something I'm passionate about, then likely I'm gonna scan the scenario and move it aside. So as you talk about the list, you probably saw a list with 20 items on it.
Absolutely.
And those 20 items were categorized in level of priority. That level of priority is not necessarily how passionate I am about it.
It's needs-based or?
It's how close that incubation is to becoming reality,
Okay.
making money. And so the level ones are either making money or they're very close to making money. The level twos are, a level below. If something triggers, if we get that client, we could make money. Level threes tend to be conceptual, and they have the ability to move to a second level if there's something significant that could happen. But it's still being thought about because it has the ability to become profitable at some point in time.
So the way you see it, it's a pipeline.
It's a pipeline.
And
yes.
there's a continuum of activities. They're all linked. It's a way of managing your internal space to make sure that the activities stay in alignment and are moving toward a desired outcome. Like
Correct.
that is internal management. I don't think anybody who's an entrepreneur that's worth their weight in gold has not figured out that they have to have some system of managing their own internal topics, strategies. And for most of us that are entrepreneurs, it's honestly, it's very busy up there. There's a lot going. Like you're either trying to help somebody, you're trying to move something forward, you're trying to scan the horizon, you're just constantly thinking. And so without having a tool, you could spill water versus put it in a cup and use it for a particular activity.
Yeah, your mind never turns off.
Mine never turns off.
And so you have to determine what's going on your list and what's coming off your list.
And it's okay to let some things come off as you kind of go through the process.
And sometimes they come off without you wanting them to come off. So let's be clear.
Let's just be clear.
Oh, yeah, they come off because something happened that will prevent them from being successful, or they will take so many resources, time, money, relationships, that it would take you moving several things off in order to make that happen.
And that's a choice that you have to make.
Yes.
Because always you're dealing with your own personal set of resources as well. Like you don't have an infinite amount of time. So you have to constantly prioritize.
Yes.
And I say that to say, we're talking about the duality between an employee and an entrepreneur. So the skill sets that we're talking about from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I would say are definitely valuable in the workplace as an employee as well, and make you a better employee. Would you say so? Or does it? Your entrepreneurs are leaders. It just depends on what you're a leader in. You're good at something, so just think about your secret skill. Your secret sauce.
That no one else has. You're better at that than they are, and than most people are. I would say, and if you're passionate about that thing that you're better than most people, you probably have a stronger likelihood of being successful as an entrepreneur. because you're never going to stop.
Because it comes natural.
It's you love it, you're good at it, and when somebody, and then there's opportunity that exists to become profitable from it. When those things come together, your ability to be an employee and think about time goes away. You no longer have that. You're now thinking about when is the opportunity to move to closer to my dream, my passion of controlling my own destiny is going to happen. It's about time at that point.
It's about time. So I'm going to shift a little bit because I want to talk to people who may not have achieved entrepreneurship as a state yet, but they're kind of working towards it. So I'm going to read a couple of signs that you have an entrepreneurial mindset, and if you could give me some ways to either cultivate it or cope with it as you're an employee. So one of the things you even brought up, you tend to take action. As an employee, if you tend to be the person that's always taking action, how can you manage that in the workplace to your benefit?
Yeah, so I would say you're a leader. So you think about the skill set that a leader needs in that particular industry, wherever you are. And every company has different ways to determine whether they're a leader in that particular company. An entrepreneur is a leader, and you're going to determine what success looks like in that company. Typically, when you're a leader, you are gaining skills at all time, and those skills are creating the vision for you to understand how the business works.
Yeah, you find yourself in places and in conversations that give you a bird's eye view or a different perspective than someone who is not taking action.
Yeah. Most entrepreneurs come out of businesses that they have learned from, whether it's a job, a career, it may be a family business, and they come and they want to do that business, do it better, change the model. They find a better mousetrap.
Find a better mousetrap.
And then they understand, which is the key, how does that make money? How can I, if I'm a consultant, how do I
the cash flow.
Charge a rate that is a successful rate based on the work that I'm doing, and have enough profit at the end to be successful?
If you can learn that by working in a business, if you, as a leader, get close enough to the model that's making your corporation money to understand what the drivers are, you can extrapolate those lessons and apply them in your own entrepreneurial space. So another thing is that typically an entrepreneur has some fear, and I don't want to, it's not fear, but it's more like fear of failing. And so there's a driven, so maybe it's competitive. Like you're either competing against yourself, you're competing against those around you, but you're just constantly moving because how would you interpret that? I don't want to say fear, but there's definitely I don't want to fail and I want to move forward.
You're very driven. You have to be very driven in order to do this.
Not necessarily because somebody told you to be driven. Would you say? I don't know. I'm self-driven, so it's easy for me to just.
You're more than likely they're self-driven in some fashion either way, but it doesn't mean they can't be pushed.
You should feed off people. Like we are friends, and I think it's because we feel each other's vision. Like iron sharpens iron. And there's a definite benefit to having people around you that push you or expand your horizons or talk to you about it in a supportive way.
Yeah, your drive comes from different places.
Definitely.
And it grows as you understand more about what makes you tick. But if you're passionate about it, it's easier to get up out of bed after midnight when something's due at 6 in the morning
100%.
And say I'm going to pull an all-nighter because I love what I'm doing and I want to maintain and be successful.
100%.
Right? So you're driven. If you're driven by passion, it doesn't feel like work.
It doesn't. It's because you want to get it right. Another sign that you're an entrepreneur is that you consider yourself an outsider, and that meaning that oftentimes you may be rejected for being different in some way, and that just makes you work harder. Would you say that you've experienced that, or is that a truth to you?
Well, if you're an entrepreneur, you are different. And some people might call that crazy.
A little bit.
And you have to not worry about what those things are, but not just because you're different, because you have figured out what's going to make money. And most people can't do
There
that.
is a theme. You have figured out what helps you make money. You understand what revenue minus expenses equals profit. You're constantly thinking about a model that will put the appropriate value on the time spent so that you can generate profit. Like, there is a theme here, and I think that that is valuable to keep bringing forward, because an entrepreneur mindset as an individual will help you drive your business, but as an employee, it will help you add value to the company that you're supporting, because either way, that is one of the drivers that an entrepreneur has.
Yeah. I mean, I always use the switch, right? So every time I come home and I do this with my lights, I want them to come on. So I am
It's one of your motivators.
I am putting together scenarios in my head, even if things aren't going right, and that happens quite often. How could I maintain that? What is going to keep me in the game until success happens?
What is going to keep me in the game until success happens?
Yeah, because it's going to happen.
Absolutely, and you have to believe.
Yes.
So you closed on one of the things that I'm going to close on for this section is you focus on what matters when you figure out what matters. And I think that your light story speaks to finding something that resonates with you, that it can be a constant reminder that's very practical. It's very pragmatic. It's not the pie in the sky. It's, for me, how do I keep the lights on for you, right? And for me, it's how do I model for my children the dream that I told them they could have. And that, to me, is always a driver. And that dream doesn't always have to be a big one. It's just creating opportunity to do something that you enjoy. So I agree. There's something that you got to hook onto and just find that thing and let it stay in there.
It's already there.
You just got to identify it.
Identifying.
You know, one of the things about being an entrepreneur, for me, it's been getting real clear. There's a lot of noise in your mind as an entrepreneur. There's a lot of things going on, but you can't make a list. You can't figure out what profit is. You can't figure out where success looks like if you don't get clear about what you really want to achieve. And that takes some time.
Yeah. I mean, and some would say a serial entrepreneur has no clarity.
I don't know. I know you. I think maybe it's because
I'm not
understand.
saying me in general. I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So
you're clear on several things. It's not that you're clear on you resonate just one. You're clear about several things.
That is correct. We say people think entrepreneurs are crazy, and that is because they do not understand how much you have in your mind and how you have laid out the path for what success could be. You're literally waiting on the opportunity.
And preparing for it always.
Yes.
Preparing for it always. So as we close this section, which was just kind of making sure you kind of understand whether or not you have an entrepreneurial mindset, I want you to be able to think about what your definition of entrepreneur, anything that we talked about that resonated with you, that triggered something like, yes, that's me. And then figure out how you can develop that. Maybe that's that thing that you're better at than most people. And figure out how do you use that thing that you're good at and the mindset that you have to create improvement in your work-life balance and your quality of life. But even, what would you say would be the goal once you figured out that you have a mindset that is an entrepreneurial? What do you think that next step should be for someone?
Practice. My practice tends to be in staying up at night researching and understanding a particular industry or niche that I enjoy or I think that I might enjoy, and being able to identify what within that industry is going to be my path to success. And I think as people think about what their passion is or think they do. Once you figure that part out, what do I really like to do? I believe there's always a way to make money from that idea.
I believe that too. It does take time and
it
takes some
time
patience.
to understand how you make money.
Yes.
But it could be anything. It could be this. Somebody had that concept, that idea.
Sure did. Somebody made 100 of those and said, "I'm going to sell them."
I'm
and
going to sell these, and
like, why?